All right, so let's talk about a real economic puzzle, the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. On the one hand, you've got this incredible wealth from oil and natural gas. But on the other hand, you see this constant cycle of instability and crisis. It's a paradox that has really defined the country for decades.
And the crazy thing is, this is not a new problem. Not at all. I mean, look at this quote. The World Bank was sounding the alarm way back in 1966. That's just a few years after independence. So the writing was on the wall right from the very beginning.
So that's the big question, right? If they knew this was a problem over half a century ago, why didn't they fix it? Well, a big part of it comes down to the classic resource curse. When you're flooded with cash from an oil boom, it's just so much easier to spend it now and keep everyone happy instead of making those really tough long-term decisions about diversification.
And man, has it been a roller coaster. We're talking about massive highs followed by crushing lows, all dancing to the tune of the global energy market. Let's walk through this history. So first you have the huge oil boom in the 70s. This is what built the modern Trinidad and Tobago. But then, boom, prices crash. That leads to a terrible debt crisis in the 80s, so bad they had to go to the IMF for a bailout, which, as you can imagine, came with some really tough conditions. Then, things get better again. A second boom, this time driven by natural gas, kicks in from the 90s all the way to 2008. But the bust that followed that one, well, that's where things get really different.
See, this latest downturn wasn't just the same old story of prices going down. No, the problem itself fundamentally changed. It became something much, much harder to deal with. And this slide lays it out perfectly. For decades, the game was all about managing volatile prices. High prices, low prices. But now the problem is managing physical scarcity. We're not just talking about the price anymore. We're talking about the gas itself literally running out. And take a look at this chart. It really drives the point home. Natural gas production, which was the lifeblood of the economy, hit its peak back in 2010. And ever since then, it's been a steady, steep decline. So think about that. It's not just that you're getting less money for each unit of gas. You have way fewer units to sell to begin with. That's a game changer, and not in a good way. Okay, so what does this actually mean for regular people and businesses? How does less gas turn into a real-world problem? Well, it creates this huge bottleneck for the one thing the entire economy runs on, US dollars, or what they call foreign exchange. It's like a chain reaction, right? A domino effect. You produce less gas, which means fewer US dollars are coming into the country. Pretty soon, there's a serious shortage of dollars. The banks have no choice but to start rationing them out. And who gets hurt the most? The very businesses that are trying to diversify, the ones who need dollars to import raw materials and equipment. They just get squeezed out. And just imagine trying to run a business in that environment. You've ordered supplies from overseas, but you have to wait anywhere from 3 to 9 months just to get the US dollars to pay your supplier. How can you plan? How can you grow? It's basically impossible. It kills that diversification effort before it even has a chance to breathe. And it's not just private companies feeling the pain. The government's wallet is getting hit hard too. With less energy money coming in, they've been running a deficit pretty much every single year since 2009. That's pushed the national debt to over 70% of GDP. That's a huge number. All of this just makes the whole economy incredibly vulnerable. It's like walking on a tightrope. So when something unexpected happens, like the US slapping on new tariffs back in 2018, it hits them like a ton of bricks. We're talking about a shock that cost their non-energy businesses hundreds of millions of dollars a year. All right, I know that sounds pretty bleak, and it is, but here's where the story takes another turn. Recently, there have been these little glimmers of hope, some signs that maybe, just maybe, there's a different path forward. Check out this data from 2023. This is really interesting. You see the non-energy sector, everything but oil and gas, it actually grew by more than 4%. At the same time, the energy sector shrank. This could be what economists call a structural break. I mean, think about that for a second. The country's economy is growing even while its main engine is sputtering. That's a huge deal. Now, it's fragile for sure, but it's the first real sign that diversification might actually be happening. The big challenge now is to keep that momentum going.
So what's the game plan? Well, it looks like a two-track strategy. On one track, you've got to squeeze every last drop of value from the old system. Get every molecule of gas out that you can, because you still need that money to run the country. But on the second track, and this is the crucial one, You have to go all in on building the new economy, because that's the only way there's a future.
And this new economy has a really clever focus. They have these amazing world-class chemical plants. The idea is to switch them over to green energy. So instead of using natural gas to make things like ammonia and methanol, you use green hydrogen that's made from solar and wind power. It's brilliant, really, because you're building on a strength you already have, not starting from zero. But, and this is a huge but, none of this is a slam dunk. It's not going to be easy. For this to actually work, they need to tackle some really deep-seated problems. They have to create a rule that forces them to save money when times are good. They absolutely, positively have to fix that foreign exchange mess. And most importantly, they need the political courage to stick with these reforms even when it gets tough.
And that brings us right back to the central multi-billion-dollar question. Is this little spark of growth we're seeing the start of a real, lasting transformation? Or is it just a temporary blip before the country falls back into that same old, painful cycle of boom and bust? Honestly, nobody knows for sure. But the next few years are going to be absolutely critical.